Nick, the New England Patriots, your New England Patriots are adding more to the offensive line. What does that mean for Drake Maye? What does that mean if they don't have a wide receiver on the roster? Look at me throwing shade right at the beginning. We're not even 30 seconds into the show, and I get shade. Welcome on into the 32 Blueprint, the ultimate NFL podcast. I'm Christian Rao here with Nick Maravets. We are breaking it down on a beautiful Wednesday morning. Did you stay up? Did you watch some NCAA basketball? Did you check out the crazy way to start the first four with Alabama State?
I mean, that was March Madness in a nutshell. For the last 45 seconds, it was just pure mayhem. And I referenced the turned it up to 11. That's what March Madness did immediately. And I love it. Unfortunately, UNC didn't deliver, but I mean, what a way to start.
Yeah, what a dopamine high by the 16 seeds. And then North Carolina comes in and finds out that San Diego State's a quad 2 and takes them down by 30 points.
They can handle quad 2s.
They're going to get humbled by Ole Miss, I think. We'll see what happens. But let's talk some football here, as we always like to do on this show. And we got some fun, interesting topics for you today. We're going to dig into the New England Patriots, adding in some more offensive line talent. Is that something, is it an interesting pick? Yeah, I think so. I think you can go either way. And then we're going to break down this team and what is still needed for them in what seems to be maybe a fast rebuild for this franchise, which is really exciting. We're going to talk a little bit more Philadelphia Eagles because one of their star players retired, and he retired on top, so something fun there. And, of course, Aaron Rodgers still in the conversation. What's going to go on with him? And does he want to be a Pittsburgh Steeler? We'll talk about a couple.
Do the Steelers want him?
That's true. There's a lot of things happening. We're left in the dark. We're left in the black, and maybe not the black and yellow.
So good.
And then you and I are going to give our way too early playoff predictions, but just as a team that hasn't made it yet for each side. We'll do that at the end of this show. So that sounds pretty fun. Let's get on into it. Let's talk New England Patriots. The reason we're talking the Patriots is, one, this is your favorite team, so we got to definitely dig into them early. But they go ahead and make another move. Free agency kind of got a little quiet over the past couple days after the crazy ads over the 10th, the 11th and such, where 90% of the free agents are signed. But Garrett Bradbury goes ahead and fills a need at center for the Patriots, a veteran starter, something that you absolutely want to have, and a player that might not always be seen as an amazing talent, especially last year. He had a tough go, but you're adding him to a room that is now going to solidify a new offensive line under Mike Vrabel and being the center for Drake Maye. What's your take on bringing in Bradbury for Maye and the rest of the Patriots?
I think it's a good pickup. Pretty solid price too. 2 years, $12 million for a starter is. I think that's pretty cap friendly. The way I look at it, at least. Obviously, the release of David Andrews is tough for. Obviously, he's just an unbelievable player and will be missed for sure. But I think just filling that hole right away. 2019 first round draft pick. I mean, this guy's got experience still. He's a dog. Anybody from Minnesota out in the Midwest, if you've got to deal with the cold, I automatically give you some brownie points. So he's got that going for him. Going up to New England, there will be cold months there as well. So I like this pick, and I do like kind of just targeting the offensive line as much as we can. We talked about the Bears, obviously, and how important that was, and those moves I think that were very important for the Bears. I think that those were much needed if they were going to focus on anything, getting Caleb Williams some help. Drake Maye, the exact same thing. And we'll get into wide receivers here in a second, but I do think that the line is where if Drake Maye can get some time, even really bad wide receivers can get open because you can only cover for so long.
That's true. Looking at his PFF scores, if you want to get into a little bit nerdy numbers here, brought that up now. His run blocking numbers, and that's what you want to think about when you're thinking of a center, higher than 2023, the same as it was in 2022, and those were his two best seasons. So he's actually, in the eyes of PFF, for an overall season grade of run blocking, a 70.5 PFF grade. That's the best in his career, tied with 2022. So that's pretty good to see. I don't know what that ranks against other people. I don't have that stat up, but overall,
but he's going to New England. He's going to a place that's going to make him significantly better.
Yes, that's true. Okay, here we go. I do have it now. His run block grade overall was 14th among 64 centers. and all of PFF of qualified centers. So that's pretty good. So you're bringing in a top third. I mean, really almost top 10%, almost of the top 20% of a center going to New England. That's nice. Overall grade, he's right in the middle, 33rd out of the 64, because his pass blocking grade was terrible, 48.2, 55th out of the 64 centers. That's where you're going to have to worry about that. But if there are great guards next to him, that might help. And we do know that Minnesota completely revamped their offensive line this year, including letting some of their guards and centers go. They brought in new guards. So maybe that shows that Garrett Bradbury can have a better season if he's around new people. And that's exactly what he's going to do in New England.
Yeah, and I think the one thing I do worry about is maybe he's a little bit undersized. But other than that, I think this will be fine. I don't think that this is like a super big head turning type of move, but I think it's a solid plug and play type of deal. Just let Drake Maye get comfortable, obviously behind this center in particular, as opposed to David Andrews, and just get ready to sling the rock. Once he's comfortable, like that's where we want him, right? We don't want him to be skittish, lightning feet, just stay calm in the pocket, get comfortable with the line, and obviously doing it at the beginning, well, pretty early in the league year, but way before the season is going to help.
6'3", 300 pounds, and we get to say he's undersized. What a world we live in.
Wild. I heard the other day, talking about March Madness, I heard the other day, they were like, he's a little undersized at 6'7". I'm like, I would be looking straight up at this man. That he's not undersized. That's crazy.
How many people do you know that are 6'7"? Like,
I saw one guy. I worked at Panda for a little bit. The guy walked in. It was Panda and Iowa State have like a partnership. So he was on some sort of team, walked in, and I was taking the trash out. I came in and legitimately walked past him like this. And I was like, I'm sorry, I have to ask you, how tall are you? And he was like, 6'8". And I was like, yeah, okay. What would you like for free? I'm terrified.
6'8" worth of orange chicken. Absolutely insane. I like their additions this year, and they've definitely done a lot. New England Patriots with Garrett Bradbury being the center. Also, Morgan Moses coming in to be the new right tackle. You're going to have Cole Strange and Michael Winu. I'm probably said his name wrong. I'm really bad at pronunciation. You're going to find that out on this show, but so are you, as your Fundations and things like that you said on yesterday's show.
Yeah, that was rough.
Offensive line is going to be still, I think, a work in progress. And I think when you look at some of the players that New England's building up, it kind of points to that they're probably going to add a couple of young players in the draft. But does that need to be their number one concern, Nick, in the NFL draft coming up? Obviously, they have a great pick. Their top 5 pick. A lot of players could fall to them, especially because they're not in the need for a quarterback. A lot of those teams ahead of them are. So where do you think that they should go in the NFL draft, which we're going to dig into a lot more draft coverage here on this show. Yes. But while we're talking Patriots, we might as well do so right now. Do you go best player available if you're picking where you are right now, or do you go for a need? And then to my mind right now, the biggest need on this team is wide receiver.
Yeah, no, this is a tricky spot, and we can all thank Drake Maye for it. Why lose the last game of the season when we could hurt our draft stock? I mean, why be one when we could be
Buffalo
4?
Bills playing chess. That's the Buffalo Bills playing chess.
It was like, I know that they're just purposefully losing this game, but you can't do anything about it. It was hard to watch. But either way, Patriots now sit at 4. You got the Titans, Browns, and Giants as it sits right now ahead of them. Like you said, we'll talk more about this as we get closer to the draft. We'll go way more in depth than this, but this is just a skyline view. Patriots sitting at 4 right now, mocking to get Travis Hunter. And you ask, do you take up like a generational player, or do you take a need at that spot? I think if there's if there is a generational player available, you take them. That being said, Travis Hunter, in my opinion, is not a generational player. Okay, I'm tired of hearing about it. He's like, the first player ever. What did Jabril Peppers do? I know it wasn't the same thing. But this has been done before. Okay, let's not get too crazy. So I don't actually want Travis Hunter at all, which I know that's not what you asked. The question is, can they trade back and get some value and still retain a player that they'd like? If they can, I want that to happen. But if they have to pick at 4, it's between Will Campbell out of LSU, that left tackle, bolster up that side of the line, or I think I'm going to butcher it, like you said, Tetoria, I think is how you say it. Tut McMillan from Arizona, the wide receiver, is unbelievable. And I do think that getting Drake, kind of a number one type of vibe guy, is going to help that offense quite a bit. I wouldn't be mad with either of those two picks at 4, but I also wouldn't be too pissed if they traded back and kind of got some, like Will Campbell's projected to go 10 right now. So you could probably trade down to 6 or maybe 7, get some value and still come away with Will Campbell if you're lucky, right? Like, do you want to risk that or not?
Yeah, it makes you wonder if a couple of those teams pass on a quarterback early and you see maybe the Raiders wanting to trade up to go and get one of a quarterback. Maybe they have faith in a Dart or a Shedeur Sanders and they want to make sure that they can get that guy. Then, hey, you never know. I like Tut McMillan as well. I think he could be a stud of a wide receiver, but I think if you're going to make that move, you got to trade down as well. Travis Hunter, interesting. The fact that you don't think he's a generational talent. I don't know how I feel about him yet. I think I want to see 1 year in the league, obviously, and then that's a cop out. But when you see him play at corner, you see him play at wide receiver, he's great in the college world. But he wants to.
Did you think he deserved the Heisman?
No.
That's
no. Genty was absolutely insane, man.
And so for me, and maybe that's what's clouding my vision. Maybe it's that I'm still a little salty that he took it, the Heisman Trophy, that is. And he's still, like, don't get me wrong, this guy is definitely first-round talent, but I just...
Oh, for sure.
There's conversations of him going 1-1, and I don't think that I don't take those seriously.
No, I don't think that's serious either. I do think what he did was super impressive, but what Ashton Genty did was even more crazy. I mean, I'm a numbers guy, and when you go and look at PFF scores and you compare PFF scores to Barry Sanders, and then you compare him to Ashton Genty, and Genty had a higher score and then doesn't win the world's, college's ultimate prize, that makes you get a big head scratcher for sure. But no, I'm with you. Let's get back into this Patriots talk a little bit, though. I love getting off topic, though. That's my favorite thing to do on this show, and we probably will be looking for squirrels multiple times. But with that being said, right now your receivers aren't anything great, and you did try and add a couple pieces last year with Jalen Polk, things like that. I wouldn't say it's not that they've worked out, and then obviously bring Matt Collins in for free agency, but Polk, it's not like he didn't work out, but I just don't know if he is going to be a true number one receiver. I mean, he was only a second round pick. It's just, I think you got to have like the dude. And although, Polk's great, Polk was never the dude when he was with Washington. There was other players, right? So I think you really have to find a guy to be your true number one, especially in what's one of the toughest divisions in football right now. Even though the Jets are going to take a step back, I don't know what the Dolphins are going to do, but if New England wants to get back to being the top of the AFC East that they were for such a long time, and they are on the right path, I think Vrabel's the right dude to do so. You got to find a way to get wide receiver. Trading down makes the most sense, but
I agree.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't hate them trading down. I'm looking at their depth chart here per Twitter, as we put so much trust in that. You got Matt Collins, Kayshon Boutte, Demario Douglas, Jalen Polk, Kendrick Bourne, Javon Baker. All these names I know too well because we put so much trust in them last year. And I don't know, I don't have the statistic up. I can't credit anybody for this. I'm pulling this out of my rear end, but I'd seen something like the wide receivers from New England were the bottom of the bunch in separation last year. And separation is, to me, one of the most important statistics for a wide receiver. And it's just like Drake Maye was getting absolutely no help. And we saw what he was able to do with that type of situation. So if they can get him anything, I think I would be bearish. I think is bearish good or bullish? I think it's bearish.
I guess it'd be right? Patriot-ish in this world.
Yeah, let's just go with that. Patriot-ish moving forward. So, but yeah, the wide receiver room is terrible right now.
Yeah, it's the one that needs to be most improved, and if they can find a way to give the weapons to Drake Maye, then he's going to take a huge step forward. Now, I think it needs to be the last thing that you fix, and I think they're already at that point because they did amazing additions to the defense. Vrabel's going to have his type of defense right off the bat with these veteran presence. I think OTAs are going to be wild to watch for. I wish they would New England Patriots have Hard Knocks this year. I really do, because of what you're going to get from this veteran presence. I think the Patriots would put on a show. But you don't need that type of, distraction. But the fact that they're solidifying their offensive line a little by little, a Will Campbell, an offensive tackle, wouldn't be bad if they see him as a tackle. Some people think his small hands, Kenny Pickett small hands, would be enough for a guard. You like that? I put pinchers up. That was.
I did see that. Yes.
but I still think wide receiver is the way to go. This team is on a true path for success, though, whether it's this year or just 1 year away. I mean, if I'm the AFC East and I'm Buffalo, if I'm Buffalo, who's been holding the East for quite some time now, which is wild to say after the Patriots did it for what seemed like forever, I'm finally worried about the Patriots, which I haven't been for quite some time. And that's something that really be interesting to keep in mind moving forward. I'm not worried about the Jets, and I have
you never should be worried about the Jets. There should never be a day in which you are genuinely concerned. I'm confident saying that.
Would the Jets win a game in the Sun Belt?
Dude, they'd be grinding out wins. It would be close. Like, they would be sneaking by.
Jets fans are going to make us eat our words at one of these days. Watch the Jets be like the first. You remember last year, all the ESPN media was like, the Jets are going to be the number 1 seed in the playoffs. Remember that?
Yeah, I remember that. It was loud. I remember it being loud.
Did you ever believe it? Did you ever believe it?
Oh, are you kidding me? I had the Jets making some noise. I thought Aaron Rodgers would turn things around, but I think that this last year proved more than anything that when you have the conversations of 0-16 NFL team versus 2019 LSU, why are we picking the 0-16 Lions? Why are we picking the 0-16 Browns? Let's take the Jets in any given year. They're significantly worse. They just can't win.
Yeah, shout out Dan Orlovsky for that one.
Shout out.
Sure he was the 0-16 Lions. He was the 0-16 quarterback, wasn't he?
I'm like 99%
was it Joey
sure.
Harrington? It was either him or Harrington. I don't know. I mean, there's a list of bad quarterbacks we can talk about on the Lions, the Bills, the Browns. I mean, they're all blue collar cities, but just you got a jersey that you could have you always see that Browns jersey, that guy with all the names. You can do that with the Bills, you can do that with the Lions, and of course you can do it with the Browns. That's probably the only teams you can do it with, and they're all just sad, depressing fan bases, and I'm a fan of one of them. Absolutely.
Hasn't gotten to you though. Hasn't gotten to your head though. That's good.
Oh yeah, don't you worry about that. It'll come out eventually. We're just too far away from the actual season starting. That's what's happening.
Yeah.
Let's turn base a little bit and talk about the defending Super Bowl champs. I know we talked about them a little bit yesterday. Dug into like what them players leaving, and can they still be a juggernaut, if you will? The defense being such a huge portion of winning that Super Bowl. I actually liked what you said yesterday, saying it wasn't just the defense, although the defense surprised the hell out of everybody what they did against Patrick Mahomes, and I think you made a really good point. But Philadelphia loses yet another player, this time to retirement. Brandon Graham played 15 seasons in Philadelphia and became the longest tenured Eagle in franchise history. He announces his retirement from the NFL. He returned from a torn tricep muscle, according to Adam Scheffler, to play in the Super Bowl and helped the Eagles win their second Super Bowl, what turned out to be his final game of the NFL career. He put out a post yesterday saying that he's leaving on top, which is pretty cool. I mean, if you're an NFL player, no matter who you are, I mean, we saw John Elway do it. We saw Brandon Graham now do it. Leaving on top has to be the best feeling in the world after a 10, 15-year career, getting to the hilltops, the mountaintops of your sport and winning it all, yelling the thing in the microphone, I'm going to Disney World. But when you're at Disney World, knowing that you never got to put that helmet on again, the bruise is never there. You just get to collect the pension and carry on. That's got to be a good feeling, man.
No, it definitely does. And to be honest, it's kind of, to me, I equate it to like walking away from the table. Like you're out there gambling, whatever your game of choice is, you just win it as big as you can. It takes some, I mean, it's very different. I totally understand that, because you do kind of take a lot of beating throughout the season and over a career as well. And you kind of know what you're getting into with the OTAs and the preseason. And it's a long grind to get to the end. But like, to come out on top, there's got to be that feeling of, could I run it? Like, what if we ran it back? And I will say this really quick. You see right there, I don't know if I can get my arm pointed to it, that bib. It was my first marathon bib. And I told myself, I'm never running another one of these, ever, 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 ever. This is the only one. Then I get back from the marathon that night and the next day, and it was like, well, not so much the next day because I was pretty sore. But that night was like, what if, that was a really cool accomplishment. And so when these guys do that, they walk away at the top. I just commend them, because it does take, like, you have to kind of mentally consider everything that goes into it and not just the feeling of the confetti falling down on you on the field while you're hoisting up the Lombardi.
You're telling me that you'd run another marathon without anybody holding a gun to your head? Is that what you're trying to tell me? That's all I took from that conversation, is that you're willing to do that again?
I think if I'm going to do it again, I want to train. I want to find out what happens when I train before one. Because I didn't train for this one.
Oh, my God. All right. The fact that you did it through absolute chaos, I want to do it again. Good for you. I've done a half marathon before, and I was just absolute jello. I don't even know what a marathon would feel like. Call the hospital in advance and just have them follow me if that's the case.
It's
Brandon Graham, though, had a hell of a career. I mean, he really did.
Oh,
he had a career, 206 games in the NFL, 76 sacks, had 359 solo tackles, and as we mentioned, all of it with the Philadelphia Eagles, getting drafted in 2010. He was a first-round pick, 13th overall from the Michigan Wolverines. So really cool season. And that's another thing too. With in the world of professional sports these days, we don't see players last that long on the same team. Now,
that's what I was just going to say. Yeah,
it's a little more likely with NFL. I mean, obviously, when you look at like NBA and things like that, like there's no way. I mean, there's no way someone's spending 15 years. I mean, who's the only one that could probably say that? Steph Curry for the NBA? Anybody else? That's it. Like, I can't name anybody else.
Even LeBron went all over the place.
Right, exactly. Michael Jordan went all over the place. Like, you name the best players. Like, the exception of like Kobe and Steph Curry, those are the only players that never left, right? So in the NFL, I think it's a little more likely for it to happen because you get your star players, they don't go anywhere. But I mean, even Joe Montana played for the Chiefs for a year, so I mean, it's absolutely doable. Jerry Rice played a couple years elsewhere. I mean, do you remember seeing him in a Seahawks jersey? Do you remember seeing Jerry Rice?
It's hard to remember, man. It feels weird. Yeah, it just feels wrong.
Different timeline. I remember this is when trading cards weren't popular, and it was like the weird era of like the early 2000s where trading cards costed just a couple bucks because they were completely worthless. But I remember ripping a pack and pulling a Jerry Rice Seahawks card. I'll never forget it. Like me as a young kid seeing that and just like being in awe, just looking at just insane. I mean, you saw him on the Raiders, that was fine, it was whatever, but on the Seahawks, it was just wild. It was just wild. But Brandon Graham, 15 years in the NFL. Congratulations. I hope you enjoy retirement. And again, going back to those Philadelphia Eagles, they're going to have to find a way to replace not only more talent on that defense, but now a big leadership presence in the locker room. They lost Jason Kelce a year before. Now they're losing Brandon Graham this year. You got to assume probably in a year or 2 years at most, Lane Johnson will be out after his final contract where they just add all that money. It's coming down to the end of the wire of a certain era for Philadelphia. Yes, they got the Super Bowl, and you get to say thank you for your service and all that good stuff. But there's going to be a point in time where this Eagles team has to find a good turnover. We think that they have the right guy in charge to make that happen. He's been great in the NFL draft so far. We'll see how he can continue that because he's got to worry about bringing some leaders, not just some tough players that are going to absolutely just crush Mahomes in the Super Bowl. Can some of those be leaders? That's the biggest question.
Well, I think it'll help if they can get more books on the sideline. That is a great step in the right direction. So shout out to AJ Brown for that. Also shout out to the author because he just turned into like a best-selling author overnight. No, I do think that the Eagles will be fine. This is the game of the NFL. This isn't a shock that these guys are going to retire. Like the average lifespan of an NFL guy is like 3.6 years or something like that. So they are bound to retire. And this is a business model that hasn't really changed that much. We've seen obviously a little bit of a jump in longevity from the 1940s, 1920s. Like those guys actually, maybe they played longer because they were built different, but I digress. The point is, this is something that the Eagles and every NFL team obviously takes into account before every single season. I'm sure that Graham's been on the radar for a few years now. Obviously 11 sacks in 22. I'm sure that they weren't thinking it as much then. But 3 after 23, there's probably conversations happening. And so I do think that the Eagles will be fine. I don't think that this wasn't an Andrew Luck retiring situation. Okay. That's what I'm trying to say here. This isn't going to send the Eagles into a spiral for years like the Colts I'm finding themselves in. I think they'll be fine.
I mean, Andrew Luck's retirement has found a way to go full circle to get Daniel Jones on the Indianapolis Colts. We get to say Indiana Jones this season.
Yes.
I mean, there's a strong possibility that Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom in the what used to be called the RCA Dome. I mean, come on.
You remember Carson Wentz, dude? That was a fun time. Sprained both ankles on one play.
He wasn't even carrying an American flag either. And he wasn't carrying an American flag.
No, anything can happen. You never know.
Anything can happen, especially on a Monday Night Football against the Bills after one play. Insane. Let's move on here. Let's talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers. Speaking of that guy on Monday Night Football, Aaron Rodgers, we're still wondering what's going to happen with him. Will he be a Minnesota Viking? Will he be a New York Football Giant? Will that happen? I doubt it. If it does, absolutely insane. What a world we're living in. If he finds a way to take the Giants to the Super Bowl, because that would be the path, right? No. But anyways, the team that I left out in that conversation that is obviously on his list is the Pittsburgh Steelers. And the reason I said that is because Steelers defensive tackle Cam Ward was on a podcast just the other day talking about just everything, Pittsburgh Steelers, offseason, things like that. And the host asked him about Aaron Rodgers, if he's going to recruit Aaron Rodgers, just kind of shooting the shit back and forth, but really was want to know what was going on. And Cam Hayward looked pretty serious with this. And after saying, you should recruit him here, he said, quote, "I ain't doing that darkness retreat. I don't need any of that crap. Either you want to be a Steeler or you don't. It's simple. That's the pitch." Pretty tough words. I kind of like it. Cam Hayward is the leader of that Steelers team. Even if Aaron Rodgers comes over to that team, I think even if he comes to any of those teams, I don't think we're going to say this is Aaron Rodgers' team, unless you're the Giants, of course. But of those two teams, I don't think you're going to say this is Rodgers' team. Cam Hayward, you like what he said there? Or you think maybe that's something where you respect it? Or you should say, hey, wait a minute, buddy, we still need a quarterback?
Actually, the way I'm looking at this is Rodgers has got to make a pick pretty quickly here. If he's going to pick the Steelers, from that quote alone, there is a building of resentment in that, we're not putting up with this crap, okay? If you can sling the ball, that's great. And as they say, winning cures all. So if he can just keep doing all this kind of bull hunky that, and I have no problem with it. I'm not going to, like I said, like we talked about, I'm trying to get invited. Yeah. But these guys are pros, okay? And obviously they're trying to win Super Bowl. So at the end of the day, if they're winning and he's doing all this crap, it's fine. But if they're not winning and there's all this extra noise that comes with Aaron Rodgers now, they're not going to be happy. And the longer that he is waiting to make this decision, and granted, there's potentially some holdup with the Vikings too, I've heard, and maybe that's kind of what's countering in here. I don't know for sure. Obviously, I don't have an ear to the door, but from that, I'm starting to get a sense of the Steelers, and he said it, if you want to be here, then just come here. All right, we're done with the crap. And so I respect it. I do, but it makes me worried about if he ends up picking him after 3 weeks or whatever it is, and he goes on some podcast somewhere and makes a ton of noise right away. I could see that building being kind of pissed off, and you really don't want your building pissed off your quarterback.
Yeah, and you talk about resentment. That could be the fact that the reason he's waiting right now, and you say it's probably because he's waiting on Minnesota's decision, that immediately puts the Steelers as the second option.
Yes,
And if you're on that team, especially a guy like Cam Hayward, you're the leader of not only that defense, but you've been the Walter Payton guy for years for that team. You have been the guy for the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's a slap in the face. And the quarterback is always supposed to be the leader of your team, in the eyes of the league when you look at it. And we don't talk about Cam Hayward, although he's going to be a Hall of Famer, the same way we talk about Aaron Rodgers, just because of the position he plays. That is the only reason, and the fact that we probably see him on Pat McAfee show all the time, talking his junk and all that crazy stuff. But because Aaron Rodgers is such a
really quickly,
polarizing figure.
He is, and I think that the league is kind of tired of it, because you saw the Jets say if you're going to come back, you can't come on McAfee. You can't go on McAfee. And so I wonder if there's going to.
What does Mike Tomlin do? Tomlin's one of those guys that ain't going to put up with that shit either.
That's what if he goes on McAfee and just starts making all this noise, and then Tomlin's like, "Yep, we're not doing that." Then if that happens in the middle of the season, then what? Does Rodgers just retire in the middle of the season? That wouldn't even shock me.
Mason Rudolph back.
Yeah.
He's back. He's in Pittsburgh.
Sounds like Steelers fans are picking Mason Rudolph over Aaron Rodgers right now. I don't know if it's 100% of them, but some are.
Paging Duck Hodges. Bring him back. You got Mason Rudolph in the building. Bring Duck back as well. If Aaron doesn't work out, you got the duo that almost led you to a playoffs a few years ago as well. You remember that? All you need, you got the Mason part. You just need the Duck part. And it's absolutely doable. No, I want to see where he goes. I still think that Pittsburgh is the right choice for Aaron Rodgers. Although the AFC is the tougher side of the conference, in my opinion, I think it is a very tough challenge for a team to get to the postseason in the AFC, especially the AFC North. What we just saw with Cincinnati doing, what Baltimore has done, Pittsburgh has a tough chance to get there. On the NFC side, I think if he goes to Minnesota, he's a playoff team. If he goes to Pittsburgh, he has a harder path to get there. And when he gets there, he has a harder path to get to the final destination on the AFC side. He's not the best quarterback anymore in the NFL. He's going to be seen as one of the best quarterbacks to ever play the game, and especially in our generation or the last generation, whenever you want to see it, for sure. But as of right now, there are multiple quarterbacks that are better than him. That's just how it is. If he was the best quarterback, we wouldn't be in this situation. Everybody would be throwing lots of money at him. There would never be a conversation of teams waiting around. He would have his answer by now. So I'm interested to see what happens. I still think the Steelers are the team that needs to sign him, though. If the Steelers want to be competitive and they don't have a high draft pick, they don't have a JJ McCarthy in the wings, they just brought in DK Metcalf, their window is now. They have to bring a bridge guy like Aaron Rodgers in.
Well, so I'll make a point, and then I got a question for you. So the point is, I see where Rodgers is going then, because you would rather be on a Vikings roster, likely. I mean, realistically here, just out of the two, it makes more sense to go to the Vikings. So if they are giving you much right now, it makes sense to hold off. The question for you is, do the Steelers go throw money at him to get it? Because you got to get him in before the building hates him.
If you're Rodgers, you want to go to the Vikings based on roster. But if the situation feels different, knowing that if you make one bad move, the Young Bucks in, put in JJ. True. Aaron's sitting down. If you're on the Steelers,
he might not even start. We don't actually even know if he would start. There's a potential that he will. I don't know. I haven't heard anything on that. So that's a good point. But the question remains: should the Steelers throw money at him to get him in faster so he doesn't get hated before he's even there?
Obviously not happening because the leverage hasn't changed. So it looks like now. It looks like the Steelers are set on their number, and if they don't like that, they're going to maybe call Russ back, maybe, or bring in a Jameis Winston. I mean, dude, who knows?
Oh, imagine Winston on the Steelers. Just think of it for like 2 seconds. That's electric. Are you kidding me? Yeah, let's do that.
Jameis Winston can throw a deep ball. He throws a lot of interceptions, but if you got George Pickens and DK Metcalf on the outside, it's doable. That team's probably a playoff team still, at least with that defense they have.
Oh, yeah.
They can save some money and give J.J. Watt the extension. I don't hate it.
Jameis Winston is my favorite quarterback other than like Tom Brady. So if you ever want to talk Jameis Winston, we are going to have a fun time. I tell you right now. I love that dude.
I love it. Well, let's finish up this show with a fun topic, and let's get, because the playoffs are only just basically a year away. Let's get your early predictions of one team from each side. We'll start AFC first because we were just on the Steelers talk here. The toughest conference, I think, to pick. Out of all the AFC teams that did not make the playoffs last year, who will make the postseason next season?
There are some teams to pick from. Okay, let's start in the West. The Raiders were the only team to not make it from the West. Obviously, Chiefs, Chargers, Broncos all making it, so that eliminates them from here. I don't think the Raiders are making it. Out of the South, obviously only one team got in. That's one that's a really easy pick just because it's kind of a toss-up, but I do think the Texans repeat there, and there's no wild card from the South, so I'm leaving them alone. From the North, the Bengals and Browns both were the teams that didn't make it last year, and we talked about the Bengals. Can they overcome their defensive side of things? I'm not going to take them, so I'm going to move to the East. Between the Dolphins, Jets, and Patriots, I'm sticking with my boys up in New England. I'm a homer. I do think that the moves they made in free agency have been very, very notable. I think Vrabel can get this team just rewired. I think that the way that their brains are kind of right now might not be perfect with the whole thing with Mayo and just coming off of Belichick, and it was a weird time, and I think Vrabel can get that right. And then with an early pick, 4 overall, we saw what happened last year, picking up May. I think that can make a huge difference. And if they can I can see them as a wild card team. Probably don't win the East this year, but I can see them being, let's say the Bills go 12 or 13 wins. Maybe the Patriots sneak in at 9 or 10, and it's a weak year for the AFC potentially. You have to get a little lucky, but I could definitely see them squeaking in as maybe a 6, but probably a 7.
I don't hate it. And talking about a quick rebuild, that would absolutely do it.
Nuts.
For Mike Vrabel in his first year, second year with Drake Maye. Don't hate it at all. And that would just set them up even more to bring in some nicer free agent weapons the year after. It would set them up towards the bottom of the draft, but I don't think they would mind that whatsoever. I would love to see that for Drake Maye and Vrabel for the rest of the Patriots to find themselves back into contention. I mean, AFC East has been boring the last couple seasons, just knowing that the Bills, I think the Bills clinched the playoffs like week 11 or something like that.
Yeah, it was really early.
It was insane.
It was really early.
Just having some competition. Obviously, Miami didn't do that. They missed out in their window with all the money they spent on their wide receivers. But I think the window for the Cincinnati Bengals, with the way that they have spent on their wide receivers, I think finally do it. Look, they were only just a game away from the playoffs last year, even with their terrible defense. They started off terrible at the beginning of the year last year. They were awful. And a lot of those games were really close matchups. They just couldn't finish off. Yes, there was some defensive woes there, don't get me wrong, but I don't think that happens twice in a row. I think we're going to see a couple teams maybe regress as well. Cincinnati's going to find a way to get better, and they find themselves as a playoff team. With that being said, though, you got to replace somebody. There's still only going to be 2 teams in the AFC North. So I think the Steelers, if they don't get Aaron Rodgers, are going to find themselves on the outside looking in the postseason. That's my early predictions. That's our early predictions for the AFC's playoff winner. Not playoff winner, but getting to the playoffs for the first time compared to last season. All right, NFC side, I think this one's even more fun because there's so much competition on the AFC side. And there's a lot of teams on the NFC that are up and coming and really fun to pay attention to. I'll go first on this one. If I had to pick a team in the NFC, I mean, what they did in the trenches this year in free agency is super exciting.
I knew you were going to take them.
How could you not pick the Chicago Bears to make a step forward? What Ben Johnson did, bringing over his stuff. I mean, he's such a fun offensive player or coach to do what he needs to do. I'm taking the Chicago Bears, not to win a division. I don't think they win the division. I think the Lions still hold that. I think the Lions are still going to be the top team in the NFC North because unless we see what happens to Rodgers, maybe the Vikings come into play. But could you imagine? Is there a chance? I know this might be really tough. You'd have to have a lot of things go right, bounce back and forth. Could we see all 4 teams from the NFC North make the postseason?
No way.
No way, right?
No
the
way.
Packers probably fall out. But could you see that happening? I mean, you'd have to basically split every game in division, then just win all your other non-divisional games. I mean, I guess there's a path, but that's never happened before.
Yeah, that would be crazy. It's possible, but I don't think
if there's any division to do it, I think the NFC North would be the division to do it.
It probably is. I think you're definitely not that far off, but that would be insane. Pretty wild.
Insane.
I'll go ahead. I'll take one. I don't think the Bears are a bad one. But I think this team, it makes a little more sense because we just talked about how tough the NFC North is, how kind of packed it is. And I'm not going to talk about every division as I did on the AFC side here. I'm just going to jump right on into it. I'm taking a South divisional team here because, like I said in the AFC, really probably only one team getting in. So you just got to win your division. That's it. Don't worry too much here. Now, granted, the NFC a little bit more chaotic, so you could maybe snag a wild card, but unlikely. The South likes to beat itself up. I'm taking the Falcons. I'm high on Penix Jr., and then they've got weapons like Mooney. I think Pitts is back. I saw a tweet. He was like, I'm coming back harder than ever.
So Atlanta's winning the division?
I think so. I think
that's 6-11, right? Because that's all they need to do to win the division. 6-11.
They were 8-9 last year and finished second. Buccaneers won it with 10 wins. It's not a super hard division to win. And you're going to face the Panthers, who are the opposite of the Patriots. They're going to take about 10 years to rebuild. And the Saints, who
we'll see what Kellen Moore can do.
Yeah, I don't know for sure. So you're really looking at the Bucs as kind of your main competition there. And there'll be a challenge for sure. But I do think that the Falcons can make some noise. I think that, I think Penix is a dog. When they took him at 8 last year, it was a shock, but it wasn't like the end of the world. I thought it was a solid pick. I honestly wouldn't have hated it even if the Patriots took him, obviously significantly earlier in the draft. Injury concerns were the only thing taking me off of Penix. So I think the Falcons have a very real chance to win the NFC South, and then therefore obviously would get into the playoffs.
Looking at the other two divisions, just to wrap it up, on the East, the Philadelphia Eagles and the Washington Commanders made it last year. I don't see the Giants making that step forward, even with a guy like Aaron Rodgers. But can the Dallas Cowboys, can they find themselves in the postseason? Yeah, no way, right?
I'm not even having that conversation.
I don't think we even should. I don't even know what they're doing. That's a conversation we need to have on one of these shows.
I was going to say.
And then on the West, I think there is I was actually close to saying this team. I think the Seattle Seahawks could be a team.
I could hear it in your voice the other day when we were talking about them, and I think I took the Raiders over the Seahawks, and you were like, don't sleep on the Seahawks. So I'm not too shocked you take them, but what do you think it is? Do you think it's Kupp? Do you think it's Kupp that gets them over the edge?
I think I really like what the Darnold piece did, and I think Cooper Kupp can be great with him and JSN together. I mean, when you talk about what the Patriots, what they talk about with trying to create separation, I mean, that's two receivers that can create separation. We saw JSN do it his entire college career. I think we'll get a chance to see that more this year. Cooper Kupp, I mean, did amazing things with Matt Stafford as quarterback.
Yeah.
And Darnold make sure he doesn't regress now that he doesn't have Justin Jefferson as his wide receiver and it being like one of the best offensive schemes that he's ever been in. That'll be the biggest question. But they were a 10-win team last year with Geno Smith. And I'm not saying nothing against Geno. I love Geno, but like this Geno to Sam Darnold to me is a lateral move. It's nothing crazy. Geno might be a little better in aspects, but for the most part overall, I'll call it a lateral move. And you're saving a lot of money, meaning that you can build for the future, and that means you can add some other draft picks needed. I like the Seattle being a potential new playoff team. I still think the Rams are going to crush that division. I don't like what Arizona's at right now, and San Francisco is regressing really hard with all their losses. So you never know. So Seattle, Chicago, and Atlanta for the NFC. I'm going to put Seattle as an honorable mention. Okay. I'm going to put them in there. And then we got New England and who did I say for AFC? The Bengals. I think those are the only two honestly choices. I mean, unless the Raiders do something crazy. I mean, Geno, I guess he could, right?
Yeah, there's a chance. There is a chance.
What did Geno say after that win? He said, "Well, they say people said they doubted me or something, but look at me now."
It was like they wrote me off, but I never wrote back. I think
that's what it was. Yeah.
I can't remember if he wrote back or he didn't write back, but either way, it was hard. What he said, it was pretty sick.
It was super hard. Yeah, I wish I remembered that because it would have made me sound a lot better than I did right now. All right, but let's dig in tomorrow. If there's nothing crazy news popping throughout the night or anything like that before we get a chance to talk, I want to dig into more NFL draft talk because we'll be on the Thursday. So I kind of want to put a new little thing in our routine. On Thursdays, we focus on NFL draft unless anything crazy happens because round one starts on a Thursday, April 24th. So we are going to be just 5 weeks away.
Hey, stick around, folks. This is going to get exciting.
It's going to be crazy. All right, folks, let's grab a bow on this one. We will see you back here tomorrow, right here on the 32 Blueprint.